Facebook Live every day at 11:30 right now, and we have been so excited and so lucky to feature and hear from local experts and doctors and psychologists and so many different people that have so many different opinions and things that they are doing right now. But I'm really excited today because today we are going to meet Adam McWhirter, who's, I don't know if that's the actual side you're on when people are looking at this, but this is the way I'm going to go, and who's live from right now in Shanghai. And he just reminded me that I had him up at 7 a.m. to chat and see if this worked. And then he stayed up now till 1:30 a.m. to talk to all of you. So Adam, hello, welcome.
Hey, morning, evening. I don't know what time it is, but yeah.
Thanks, guys. Sorry, apologize. Let's start with, we have to say, I've known Adam since we grew up in the bustling metropolis of Gibbons, Alberta, population 3,000. I think it's still 3,000. Is it?
I have no idea. The sign says 3,000 last time I was there, so.
Yeah, me too.
Probably the same sign. So.
Yeah. I was just there on the weekend because my Auntie Beth and Uncle Jamie are actually moving out of there, so there's no one left at the farm, and there's not a lot of people left. And it was a fun place to grow up. I wouldn't change any of those things. But the point being, we've known each other for a very long time, and Adam has landed in Shanghai. So I'm going to give it to you and tell us, who are you? What do you do? And how did you get there?
That's a lot.
Start with who are you besides Adam?
So for me, as you mentioned, we grew up together in Gibbons. I left Edmonton when I was 22, a long time ago, 18 years ago, and I went to Taiwan. I spent a few years in Taiwan teaching English. It was my first time in Asia or China. It depends where you draw the line. But I just knew that I kind of discovered my love. I don't say love, but like that. I felt comfortable living in this part of the world, so I just never left. So,
did you know that instantly? Like, did you feel something different instantly?
No, but I got used to it. I mean, there's a certain energy when you're in China, in Asia, in any of these big cities. It's the same thing if you go to New York, right? You go to New York for 2 or 3 years, there's going to be a certain energy that you just kind of get accustomed to. Where, I mean, I love Edmonton. I'm from Edmonton, but it's a little slow, right? It's not quite the same. So yeah, that's kind of where I went with a friend originally. You asked me earlier today, like, why are you there? I chased a girl. I can be honest when I say chased a girl. But I went to Taiwan and it was teaching English there for 3 years, and I didn't really know anything again about China, about Asia, but I definitely was not an English teacher, but I spoke English, and so it sort of started my journey back then.
When you think of where that journey has taken you, and we'll get to that in a second, would you even projected that you were going to stay there forever and it would take the paths it has? Because you'll find out in a second, everyone, that Adam has really delved into business and all different kinds of things. But could you have ever imagined where it would have taken you?
No, I was planning to stay for 1 year. Right, that was like, it was going to be 12 months, and the backpacking through Australia or the teach English abroad. Like, it's kind of like that 1 year of just adventure and travel. 100% no, that was not the plan originally. So I've been saying it from the first year, and you asked me this earlier, but if I'm not happy, I stay. Or if I'm happy, I stay. If I'm not happy, I go. So I've been saying that for 18 years. So.
And there you are. So let us know, what are you doing? Where are you right now? And what is your day-to-day role? Like, what has that turned into?
Okay, so in 2007, I moved to a city called Chongqing, so southwest China. Very, very southwest China. And remember, China, roughly the size of Canada, a little bit smaller, but I guess the Calgary of China, if you're going to do it geographically, type thing. And so I moved to Chongqing in 2007, and I was working for a Chinese company at the time. At first, I was working in they had a theme park called Foreigner Street, and it was, I don't know how to explain it. It was Klondike days, but a permanent Klondike days.
Ooh,
but also a lower quality Klondike days, I would say. Like I would never go on any of the rides there. But anyway, I worked in this theme park as a foreign manager for 9 months. I worked for the company directly. It was actually China's largest door manufacturer that owned the theme park. And so to get land from the government, they opened a theme park, and then they got a factory on the other side of the mountain to build their factories for doors. And so there were 9,000 employees, one foreigner, me. So I did a lot of really, I guess I did a lot of good for the company, but I also did a lot of like foreign guy jobs. Yeah, just drinking with the boss, just socializing, kind of that foreign face for the company. But I wasn't actually doing much on that side of things. But it was 2007 in Chongqing. It was the fastest growing city in the world, something like 20% growth, 22% growth year on year. It was really an incredible city. It was an up and coming city. And then I met my business partner, Peter, who was Dutch, who lived in the next city over. And this company that he started, I opened our third office, and they did what's called relocations. So we're not a moving company, but what we do is deal with people. So we help foreigners come to China. So we do home search. So when you were a kid, your family was relocated to the US. Mm-hmm. I would have been helping you, but in China. So we do home search, school search, settling in, cultural training. We help originally anyway, like our mandate or our goal was to help foreigners come to China. So
you loved
literally,
it.
And literally everything that you could possibly need as an expat, as a foreigner, that's what we do. So to kind of speed that story up a little bit, basically we kind of grew and expanded. I became a partner a few years after starting. I have staff in 10 cities in China right now. We coverage in 32 cities. We do business consulting, so we do market research, business setup, more than helping individuals, but we help companies expand in China. We do a lot more into residential real estate now, property sales, property management. So it's kind of, we've grown and I guess you could say we're that bridge into China. Yeah.
It's a fascinating industry. It sounds like there's so many fascinating cities. And so you've been to and in and around several cities in China then.
Yeah. So there's something called second tier China. So China's big on labels and whatnot. So Shanghai and Beijing, that would kind of be Toronto, Vancouver, if you're going to do a comparison to Canada. Second tier China, now these are big cities. Most of them are 8 to 12 million people. So they're not small. Chongqing, the city that I lived in originally, is 32 million. So these aren't like, when I say second tier, they're not like Red Deer, right? Yeah. So the second tier cities in China would be, in comparison, would be Ottawa, Edmonton, Calgary, Montreal, kind of that Winnipeg, that next level down underneath Toronto, Vancouver. Mm-hmm. So we spent a lot of time growing our business, expanding second tier China. So I was averaging 3 cities a week for quite a few years. So I did spend a lot of time traveling. So that's sort of, a lot of people, when they think about China, think Shanghai, Beijing. You don't hear about those other cities.
You absolutely don't.
Yeah.
So then, in January or even December in China, COVID hit. And I know everyone listening has been waiting for us to talk about that, but I wanted them to have an idea that you knew the entire space and that you've worked in it. And so we can relate some of the next things we're talking about. Oh, that's Mavis. You can't quiet.
I see Mavis. My dog is sleeping right now. He's waiting for me to go back to bed. So
she goes, don't. So let's start with that. When did COVID become a reality there? And what did you see when you looked out your window? Like what did you see? How did it impact what you saw?
When did COVID hit? So first of all, the city Wuhan. Wuhan, now it's in the news. It's a city of 10 million people. It's geographically, it's pretty much the middle of China. So a lot of times because of our network, because of our experience, I do a lot of like webinars and talks on this is China. And the further I go away from, like even in Hong Kong or Singapore or other Asian markets, I still have to educate people on what the reality of China is, or what life is like in China. We were talking earlier today on WeChat, and we'll talk about WeChat, but like there's so much happening here that the rest of the world doesn't necessarily know about. But one of the things I like to do is like I've used Wuhan as an example for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. So the trains in China, the high-speed train lines, you can travel anywhere, anywhere in China with all the high-speed train network. And when I started in Chongqing, which is in southwest China, it was 350 kilometers away from Chengdu. So kind of like Edmonton, Calgary.
Yeah.
And it used to take maybe 3-4 hours to travel in between the cities. And then they built the high-speed train line. It's an hour between the cities now. The high-speed trains go 100 kilometers an hour. So all these cities are now interconnected. Within Wuhan, from Wuhan, within 5 hours, you can travel to Chongqing, Shanghai, Beijing, Hong Kong. That's 1 billion people. So kind of like from this city of Wuhan that most of the world has never heard of, it has access to this huge market. And so it's geographically, it's actually very important in China. And so we opened our Wuhan office in summer of 2009. So we've been open there for a while. And so I do know the city well, very well, actually. And so we weren't hearing a lot in the early days. So even December, we didn't hear anything. You kind of hear rumors of a virus. Hi, Mavis. You kind of hear rumors of a virus. But nothing substantial. Even into January, there was nothing to be worried about. There was no panic. So being in Shanghai, which is 500-600 kilometers away from Wuhan, there was nothing to raise concern. It wasn't until late January, actually. So to kind of put things into a timeline of things, January 13th or 14th, which was a Monday, I brought my manager from Wuhan to Shanghai. So my China operations manager, because geographically she's so interconnected to all of our cities, she's not based with me in Shanghai. She lives and she's from Wuhan. She's based in Wuhan. In January 13th, 14th, she came to Shanghai. I didn't worry about her coming to Shanghai. I didn't worry about she's going to make me sick. There was none of that, right? Like January 17th, which was Friday, she went from Shanghai to Wuhan. We had a great week. We planned our entire year, right? We had our whole strategy sessions, and it was a fantastic week. Friday afternoon, before she went to the train station, we had our happy hour and had a drink and a glass of wine, and nothing. I wasn't concerned. So that was Friday. So she went back to Wuhan, and on the Sunday, the 20th, I flew to Chongqing, which is southwest China. Again, it's the next city over from Wuhan. It's 400 kilometers away, whatever it is, 1 hour flight. I didn't have trouble traveling on Sunday. I didn't think about it. So on Sunday, January 20th, I had no issues traveling to Chongqing for meetings on Monday. Monday, I had meetings. Monday afternoon, that's when I started to get like, whoa, what's going on? What's happening? It was Monday afternoon that I actually told all of my Wuhan staff, okay, just work from home. And this was the week leading up to Chinese New Year. Chinese New Year, think of Christmas. Yeah. Right? Think of December 22nd. You're not working very hard, right? You're kind of coasting into the holiday. So for me to tell my staff to work from home, same thing. I'm like, guys, just work from home. There's no point. But there's no panic yet. And then on the 21st, I was flying back. That's when things went full-blown panic across China. Masks, hand sanitizer. That's when everyone's like, okay, what's going on? Panic, blah, 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 blah. And I had to take a flight from Chongqing back to Shanghai. And I didn't like that flight. I didn't have a mask. masks were sold out across the city. So from like Friday of no panic, back everything's kind of normal, to like 3-4 days later, full blown panic. It changed really quick. So that was the 21st, the 23rd. That's when Wuhan closed. That's when they closed the borders to Wuhan. And I think it was the 25th, they closed the border to the entire province. Like within a week, it went from kind of, something's going on, but you weren't worried. Again, I had my Wuhan manager in Shanghai with me. I wouldn't have brought her to Shanghai if there was a panic, if there was any hesitation at all. So, yeah, that's kind of
Did it surprise you how quickly it changed? And, would you have expected to see more, hear more? Or not there?
No.
Because here, something happens and it's on social media and it poof goes, right?
But there's still social media here though, right? So, I mean, we can get into the political side of things, right? We can start discussing whether China was completely open on numbers, and I don't think China was, but I also don't think that people knew what was going on, right? Like there was a readjustment on numbers recently in China because they actually realized how many people were sick or were dying, but they weren't getting they weren't checking the boxes early on because nobody knew what was happening. But you asked me if I realized it happened so quick. Look how quickly things turned in North America. Mm-hmm. There was 1 week, everything was normal, and then the next week, everything's canceled. Yeah. That same 1 week timeline did actually happen in everywhere else in the world. It was like, okay, don't worry about it, kind of quiet numbers, nothing, and then boom, that 1 or 2 week turnaround happened really quick everywhere.
So how long were you physically in lockdown, isolation, quarantine where you are?
Okay. Again, geographically, I'm a 2-hour flight from Wuhan. So I'm on the coast. So we're far enough away that we weren't on full lockdown. So Hubei province, which, I don't know, Manitoba.
Okay.
let's call Wuhan Winnipeg, since they're both, yeah. So anyway, Wuhan was on lockdown, and when I mean lockdown, it was not leave home. It was, at first, it was like you could go to the supermarket. You could go to the supermarket every 48 hours, and then eventually it became you don't leave home. The infrastructure in China, though, for grocery delivery, for food delivery, is a lot more robust than North America, and that's just a lot of reasons for that. So Wuhan was on lockdown. Like my staff, I have 5 staff there. They didn't leave their home for 80 days. Literally.
Like not walk around the block, leave their home?
Not walk around the block, leave the home.
Wow.
They could leave housing compounds. It might be like one apartment building in Edmonton, where here it's like 10, 20, 30 apartment buildings all in one development. So you could leave your apartment building and walk around like the garden area in between the apartment buildings, but not leave the actual housing complex. So 80 days, they didn't leave their home. The rest of China, though, for the most part, we could leave. I mean, I walk my dog twice a day. There were restrictions on some compounds, or some cities would have different restrictions on, like, maybe one person could leave every 48 hours to go get groceries or this or that. But I would say the social distancing, which became a Western word in March. Before we didn't call that social distancing in here, we just followed the rules. But I would say most of February, on a timeline of things of like really restrictions. It wasn't until March that things started to kind of open up a little bit, and restaurants or supermarkets started to get a little bit.
When the rules were laid out there, where you are, and watching it across the country there, people just followed the rules. And I know it's how naive that question sounds, but even here, I understand what the rules are: 6 feet apart, social distancing, don't go here. But you see it all the way around you. Is that a case there, or just the rules were followed? There's different, I imagine.
Culturally, China's a little bit different. It's obviously. Let's simple. Let's look at China's a we culture, and maybe at the other extreme, the U.S. is a me culture. So for the most part, people followed rules. Like there was an understanding of why people needed to quarantine. There was no, like in Wuhan, as an example, there was no civil disobedience. That didn't exist, right? People obeyed the rules and understood why you had to stay home, and that was it. So a little bit different here.
One of the things that people have been asking and curious about when I was telling them I was chatting with you is if you saw the media coverage here in Canada. I'm going to say Canada because I am not in the US and I'm not going to talk about their media coverage. But in Canada, our media coverage here, and being, former journalist and stuff myself, I fully believe in what they do. And I know how hard each and every one of them works. Do you think it was a true representation of what was happening in China? I mean, it was out your door.
I think
out your door, literally?
Yeah. So your question is, do I think the Western media covered what was happening
accurately?
That's a big question, because I always defend. Yeah, my brother always laughs at me a little bit, like when I'm defending China. Western media in general does not always portray the reality of China.
Okay.
So on many topics. Do I think Western media covered it? Yeah, to be honest. If you get rid of the sensationalism of it, the fear, if you get away from the extreme, like proper media, not just social media, I didn't see anything wrong, especially when I do follow Canadian media, obviously.
What did we miss? Did we miss something, in your opinion? And if we did, what was it?
There's a lot of misinformation. And when this first started in China, let's just look at the Chinese side of things. The misinformation on boil vinegar at your doors and you won't get coronavirus. All those things of what to do. Oh, I don't get this, or I don't get, like, that sort of misinformation happened everywhere. So there was a little bit of misinformation on what is a wet market, as an example. And again, this is not just a corona thing. I mean, I've never seen a bat for sale at a wet market. To get that clear, wet markets are farmers markets. Like 99.9999% of the wet markets in China are just a farmer's market. They're just a little old lady selling fresh fruits and vegetables. So they're not that whole, it's not every, like when you hear wet market now, I think in the West, my opinion of how wet markets can be portrayed, it's a farmer's market. It's the 104th Street Market on a Saturday afternoon with selling fresh fruits and vegetables. Like, it's
one of the best places to be. You're happy, you're out, you're in spring.
Yeah.
So I think that's it's nice to know that. It's nice to think that, because my head went somewhere totally different when I hear the word wet market. So
yeah, so wet market is not this, this rare meat something, whatever it is, whatever the misconception is. Like, people now hear wet market and they automatically think fear. They automatically think like bats and coronavirus. Those are so rare. So those misconceptions, though, on China aren't just because of COVID-19. They're just more of the just misunderstandings of what China's really like. So do I think what Canadian media miscovered anything? I didn't see anything too abnormal of specific to coronavirus.
So, I mean, you've watched our media here, and it's affecting everybody, families, kids, as it has there, as it is around the world right now. How did it affect your business, and what are you seeing now?
Okay. 80% of what I do is helping foreigners come to China.
We're not allowed there, right?
I know, but that's only March 29th. So my partners and I, and then my management team, it was not an easy February. Mid to late February, okay, could breathe a little bit, but like this, back to the timeline, like January 23rd, Wuhan's locked down, pandemic in China. We didn't know what was happening. There was fear. Yeah, sorry, Mom. I was scared. Like, it was scary, right? Like, I don't know if my mom's watching.
March 18th here. I still remember the exact day, and I wasn't sure what was going to happen. So you're not alone. The timelines were just earlier.
Yeah. So we had to make decisions early, basically, because we knew my industry is helping foreign companies. And if this was just isolated to Wuhan or just isolated to Hubei province, and again, Wuhan is one of our biggest offices. It has been for the past 6 years, right? So for me, it's not like this. It's not this like Red Deer. It's not like, I'm sorry if anyone's watching from Red Deer, but it's not like I love Red Deer. But it's not like a city that has no less important to us. Like, it's an important city for my business and my industry. So we had to make decisions on how to survive this, what's going to happen. We basically, first week of February, right after Chinese New Year. So Chinese New Year is kind of that 1 week of, again, comparison to Christmas to Western New Year type thing. So it'd be like, the comparison would be like January 2nd when things get opening up again. We had to make decisions, business decisions. We had to cut costs because we knew this was, regardless of what happened, even if it was under control, we knew in the short term, it was going to have a dramatic effect on our business. So we looked at cutting costs on offices. I haven't laid anybody off yet, so that's a bonus, but some very difficult decisions on what was happening, because no foreigners coming to China. March 29th this year, so 2 months after basically things really went wrong, China, the borders are closed right now in China. So as a foreigner, like, if you wanted to come visit me, Des, sorry, you can't. I want you to come visit me.
I will, not right
now. But yeah, a company that supports foreigners coming to China when the borders are closed. Yeah. So we kind of had to look at our other forms of revenue. So we could do consulting work. So we started looking at, we do what's called a WFOE, your business license, your wholly foreign owned enterprise. So that type of foreign owned business license. We've always done registration. We started to look at deregistration as an example. Not that I want to help foreigners close their business, but looking at the reality of things, there were a lot of companies that were starting to go to business or restaurants or doing different things. So looking at the market and looking for different opportunities, I started creating working groups, looking at connecting my company to Vancouver and Canada a lot more. We looked at doing the masks, PPE, masks and ventilators, and because once China got under control, the rest of the world started to need a lot of, and so we started looking into outbound shipments and export to anywhere that needed it. So there's a lot of different opportunities we started looking at, expanding our residential portfolio, just doing things that didn't have to do with foreigners, because
you had to.
Coming to China, it killed 70% of my business basically.
I hear you. Our event space is empty, and our co-working space is empty. But I mean, like you're doing and like you did, I'm not going to use the word pivot because I feel like that word more defines completely changing it. I think shift or refocus is maybe a better word because it's still aligned with your brand and what you guys were meant to be doing. It just in different ways you're doing it, right? Your focus changes, but you didn't completely turn a corner and decide to, start digging ditches.
No. But so when that manager came, so she's from Wuhan. Our goal for the year the industry I'm in is called destination services. So helping foreigners come to China. So we wanted to be the best destination service provider in the world. That was our goal. We had and this was January 13th to 17th. We had very lofty goals. And we are very well respected in the industry, and it is a global industry, obviously. But we've always had consulting and we've always had residential services. Those were put on the back burner on January 17th. We said, okay, we're going to put those off aside. We're going to focus on this one business line. That all 2 weeks later is like, gone. Okay, it's like scramble. Start picking up our like, okay, forget our plans. Like literally, completely scrap our plans. And that's the problem is like you can't plan more than like a week ahead right now.
No.
Right. Like
no, you can't.
That's
which
the
is
biggest
hard
challenge I have.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to know right now. What are you seeing outside? Everyone, we've seen a lot on our news about second waves, and we hear a lot about, as we try and get our peaks and stuff under control in Alberta, that's where we are, where I am obviously, and then across North America, you guys have had the peak and have come down that peak. Are you seeing second waves? Is there something that we should be anticipating? I mean, it kind of seems you guys are leading the path on both coming out of this and going into it.
Okay. I have opinions, of course. But like I'm not a doctor. I'm not. I know.
Oh gosh.
I know. What to expect? I don't know what to expect. I can't plan more than a week in advance. But what's outside in China right now? So February is most things were closed. Supermarkets were open, all restaurants were closed. You could still go outside. And it was March, things started to loosen up a little bit. So more and more restaurants opened up, office buildings opened up, but there was a lot more restrictions. So one of the things that China implemented really early, and again, I'm going to say something that, do you know what a QR code is?
No.
I know. Exactly.
I don't know. You asked that. That was a mean question.
That was a mean question, but that was more to like your listeners or your viewers. QR codes are like there's a barcode, so I'm just going to show you a green QR code, but that is a QR code.
Oh, we have all over the place. Okay, yeah, I didn't know that's what it's called.
Okay. So QR codes in China, you pay the bill with QR codes. Everything is about QR codes and mobile payments and whatnot. So maybe third week of February, China implemented this QR code system. So there's two big China media companies. One is called Tencent, one is called Alibaba. So you've probably heard of Alipay or WeChat or different things. Anyway, through your phone, they know if you've left China in the last 2 weeks, or they know if you've left your city in the past 2 weeks. And so what they do is you download this program within the app, and then you get a green QR code. If your QR code is green, it means that you're safe. So you've been in Shanghai for 2 weeks. If your QR code is red, it means you've been outside of Shanghai, or somebody in your apartment building has been sick recently. So what happened is they started to restaurants. If you go to a restaurant, show me your green QR code. If you go to a office building, you have to show your green QR code. So all of a sudden you had restrictions, it wasn't restrictions, but you had to prove that you've been in Shanghai or any of the cities for the past 2 weeks. And so that happened right away. So that's one thing that changed.
That's a really interesting way to get people moving around again.
Yeah. And you can look at it as government's tracking your phone. I'm not going to get into the politics of that. Not going there. But I look at it as if you have a green QR code, you're safe. And you have to prove that you've been in Shanghai. Now, of course, there's ways of going around it. So what I did, actually, this QR code is a one from, what does it say? This QR code is from March 29th, which is old. So it's dated. So I was trying to be tricky. So I put it on my screen background. I was trying to like game the system, and like I don't like to press a few buttons before I walk into a restaurant. But it's date stamp now, and so people watch for the date stamp as well. So you can't fake it. It has to be a live, instant QR code to prove that you've been in the city for the past 2 weeks. So that's one thing that's happened.
That's fascinating. But if this all started in January, so February, March, April, May.
Yep.
So you're going into month 4. We're only in month 1 and a little bit. So buckle up. We're in for a while. And then some, right? So January, February to March, March to April. So that's 3 months.
But let's not okay. Let's say February though it really started. Like it was right at the end of January, right? So, but I don't see any other country locking down quite the way China did,
no.
Right? So, again, not getting into the politics of things. Yeah, maybe there was uncertainty at the beginning on how things were handled, but China locked it down really quick. Like literally overnight, they locked down an entire city of 10 million people. So it was like Thursday night, they decided to close New York or Southern Ontario, basically. Like just closed, borders shut, no one in, no one out. So I don't know how long it's going to take you can't really give an estimate for Edmonton. Like how can you control that?
You absolutely can't. I was just curious looking at timeline wise and stuff where that was going, but
yeah, there's still so much movement, right? There's still people flying around. It's way too open, my opinion. So
it's an ever changing thing, and it's really interesting to hear perspective from somebody who's not sitting next door in Edmonton, right? And we've heard from so many different experts and people, and I'm not claiming that you're an expert on what's happening there, but it's just a vision. So what you're seeing out your door, what you've seen through your business happen. Now, I have to know, was there all of your employees okay?
Yeah. So again, I have 30 staff throughout China. I have 5 that were based in Wuhan. I don't want to say the closest, but I had one staff, her aunt was sick. And this was at the beginning in Wuhan when they were still building the hospital, and the hospitals were full, right? So she was sent home. When she was sick, she was sent home because there was just no room for her. Eventually, she got admitted to a hospital and then recovered, and she's fine. So that was sort of, that was, I guess, the closest of any of my staff actually had to being sick. But again, back to Wuhan, I had one staff, her husband had a flooring company, and he was doing the flooring for that hospital, that 1,000-bed hospital that was built in 10 days. So he was also close to it, but again, more on the construction support side of things. But yeah, staff 100%.
Good.
Yeah, even friends, family, that's the closest I got was my one staff had an aunt who was sick.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I don't like hearing anybody. What are you seeing there for testing? Because testing is big here right now, right? We need to have more testing. Alberta's doing really good in that. I commend that. I commend all those frontline workers in every country around the world. Like what they're doing is amazing to me. And I think that there's these unsung heroes now, like the grocers and, cab driver, all those people, I think really deserve some huge applause. But testing is the big one. What are you guys seeing?
Okay, I've never been tested yet. From what I understand, it's not the nicest experience. I think it's like kind of a swab Q-tip type thing to do the testing. But anyone entering China is tested upon arrival. So that started again 6 weeks ago. And again, the movement of people 5-6 weeks ago, anyone entering China had to do a mandatory 2 weeks quarantine. And then they made that 2 weeks quarantine happen in a hotel. So the government took over hotels. And so like everything was very, very controlled. So you cannot enter China without being tested. So that's sort of where it is right now. Wuhan opened up last week, 8 days ago, something like that. To leave Wuhan, I could be wrong. So again, things change every day. But I believe if someone's going to leave Wuhan and come to Shanghai or any other city, they'll have to be tested and quarantined and everything. But what I'm seeing for testing is like if you're coming from a potentially infected region globally or within China, it's an automatic test and an automatic 2 week quarantine. Like no questions asked. And And when I mean quarantine, it's like you don't leave. I had some friends who came from New York just before the borders were closed. Actually, anywhere in the world, it was 2 weeks home quarantine. They monitor it. They take your temperature 3 times a day or 2 times a day, whatever it is. They take out your garbage, all the food and the groceries delivered. Like when it's quarantine, it's like closed door quarantine. Like there's no go for a walk type quarantine.
Yeah.
And that's all controlled. You're taken from the airport directly to the hotel. You don't see anybody. You get off the plane. It's hazmat suits. Like it's extreme measures on keeping it under control.
It's fascinating. It's I don't even know where to go from that. It's interesting to see. The talk and what we're hearing a lot here is that they want to test everyone just so they can start seeing who can go back to work and seeing some of those things. It's, the world as we knew it is going to be different. It's never going to be the same. Yeah. Has all of this made that feel even more like home for you? Because your heart's there, your home's there. I mean, you're defending and being a part of your home as you should.
No, it definitely does. China's my home. I have no plans to leave anytime soon, but it hasn't made it more my home. I can still be critical of decisions and, definitely, I wouldn't say more so, my home.
What would you say you've seen that has been positive through all of this? I mean, watching here and watching people come together and help and lend a hand in ways that maybe we haven't seen in a very long time has brought that positivity and has given those lifts when people are stuck at home. Have you seen that there as well?
In a way, I feel my team is actually closer now, like my China team. So again, the 30 employees across China, we're closer now than we were before. And because everyone was stuck at home, we were going through this and we were, checking in on the Wuhan staff. And I feel, and it sounds very strange, but even though we're all distance, we're closer. When's the last time you and I talked with video chat?
I don't know. Before last media, you couldn't do it on video. You had to do it in real life.
No, but the positivity is I think people are connecting more in a way. You reaching out and having this real connection where before not that you take people for granted, but you're reaching out to those connections a lot more. So that's one positive thing. I think, we have, and we were in the WeWork ecosystem in China. And so I had offices throughout China. And one of the first thing I did was I canceled all my offices. I'm like, we're out, bye, because everyone's working from home. So I'm like, there's no point for me to pay any office rental. Do we go back to offices? Not just us, like globally, what's the commercial footprint going to be like because of this? Because everyone's learning to work from home and realizing that they don't need to be in the office to be productive. So what's going to happen to commercial real estate? So again, a positive, a change. That's just something that
coworking. That's what's going to happen. There's my shameless plug. I'm not. I can be biased now, and I will say that to the idea of bringing people together in some of the unique spaces that we even have them here in Edmonton, not obviously like they have them in China, but there are other ways to work. And I think this is going to, you're right, show people there are different ways you can work effectively.
Why do you need a giant, if you're a corporate Fortune 500 bank, whatever, why do you need a giant office space? So I think that's, again, you asked me about positives, but I think that's going to be one of the positives from this is how does the work world change, so to speak?
This has been fun. I could chat with you for a long time, but I got to go for a 6-year-old soon.
Well, next time we have to do it in person though, like either Shanghai or Edmonton, one of the two cities.
Let's do a shameless plug. What is your company? Where can people find you? And if they have more questions and understand, anybody listening or watching, Adam is not a doctor. He's not an expert in that field. We're just getting someone's opinion and talking to someone who's from here and knows Edmonton and knows all of our spaces, who's now living there and has been for a long time. So.
Yeah. Okay, shameless plug time. So basically, anything that a company needs while they come to China, whether it's market research, moving foreigners, site selection, literally setting up your business license, setting up your social media. That's what I do, right? When I said we're the bridge into China. So and across China, not just Shanghai, Beijing, Vancouver, Toronto, every city. You can look me up on LinkedIn. Do you need the spelling of my last name? MCWHIRT.
I'll post all of that in the comments.
You'll post that. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can look me on LinkedIn, emails. Probably LinkedIn or email is the best if you want to check me out on Instagram. You can see my views of China for the most part. But yeah.
And watch time change better than I do.
Pardon me?
Watch time change better than I do.
Watch time change. No, but come on, 11:30. You have this podcast or your live show at 11:30 every day. So I get it. I can stay up.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
I can drink beer while doing this, and it's acceptable. So
it is absolutely acceptable. Absolutely. Okay. Well, we'll get your
time zone works.
Thank you. That was so much fun. We'll do it again soon in person.
Perfect.
I told you, you're now stuck with us. So here we go. Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that later. All right. Bye, Adam. Thank you.
Thanks, Tess.